In this lab, you will create a Power BI desktop solution to enable the reporting and analysis of a sales activity within US region. So this will involve creating a Power BI desktop queries that source data from multiple different sources. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the Power BI desktop from here, so which I have right in my taskbar. Power BI desktop is a free download which anybody can download, and as far as you have this tool, you will be able to create dashboards and publish to the Power BI site in within Office 365. So the first thing I'm going to do is just to make sure that I want to save all the files which I'm creating. I'm going to save this as US sales activity, uh, and then just say V1, and then I'm going to save it. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to get data from an external data source, which is, in this case, it's going to be SQL Server. And I'm going to provide my credentials for my SQL Server database. In this case, it's going to be, I'm just going to type that right here. And my database is Tailspin Toys. Which is mandatory. And now I have a couple of different options to import the data. I can either import it or I can have a direct query to the database. When I import it, the data itself is going to be imported into the desktop. If I do a direct query, the data is going to reside in SQL Server, and I'm going to have, I will have the ability to have those direct query to the database. Now I'm going to say OK, and at this point what it's going to do is it's going to connect to the SQL Server database, and it's going to provide me an option to choose all those tables which are available for me to select. In this case, I'm interested in my sales data, so I'm going to click on sales, and I'm going to click on edit the data. So what's going to happen at this point is it's going to bring up a query editor where I can actually go ahead and make some modifications to the data with respect to the columns as well as the data itself. So as you can see right here, I see the selected data source, which is the sales table, which is shown right here. Now, what's interesting is if I go all the way to the right, while this the sales table, while I chose the sales table, what it did is it kind of identified some of the related tables, and I have the ability to pull those related data values. In this case, when I click on product, it's basically bringing those data from the product table, but it basically provided me an expansion of all those columns I can choose from the product table. So I went ahead and chose product SKU, product category, as well as demographic. And I'm going to uncheck the original column name as prefix, so it will not do things like product SKU. So what that did was it basically expanded that out to the names from the related tables. And I can also do the same thing with a state here. So I'm going to choose the region name, well, in fact, actually, I'm going to choose the state name as well as the region, and then I'm going to choose that as well. So now what it did was, again, it found another related table to the state region, and it actually pulled that as an optional table where I can actually pull those data from. So I'm interested in the region name as well, so I'm actually going to pull the region name as well. So what it actually did was I have the ability to pull those extra columns from my related tables here. Now I want to go ahead and delete a bunch of columns which are unnecessary, which I'm not interested in. So I can obviously go to each of those columns. Like for instance, if I select order number and if I select the control key, further I can actually choose maybe ship date, which I'm not interested in, or maybe customer state ID or product ID. So these are some of the ID columns which I'm not interested in showing in my output dashboard. So therefore I can right click on it and say remove columns, and it just basically removes all those different columns. And I can further also do things like, let's say if I want to rename some of these columns, I can easily do that by right clicking on it and just click on rename, and I can easily rename those columns. So basically it provides you the ability to provide concise and friendly names, which ensures that the data visualization captions are easy to understand. So I'm not going to do further. So I think I'm happy with the sales data at this point in time. So I'm going to, I want to insert, in fact, bring more data from other data sources. And in this case, I have a sales data in SQL Server, but I have a bunch of product cost data in an Excel spreadsheet. So I'm going to pull that from my Excel spreadsheet, very similar to how I pull the data from SQL. I'm pulling it from another data source, and over here I chose product cost, and I said okay. So at this point I have two data sources. I have an Excel data source as well as I have I have a SQL data source. So this data represents the cost of each product. Product cost is actually stored externally from the SQL Server sales database. And what we're going to do is we're going to integrate the sales query developed in the previous task to enable profit analysis. So I loaded this at this point in time. So the next thing I want to do is I want to relate these two tables or merge these two tables, very similar to how you create a foreign key between these multiple tables with respect to relationships in a relational database. I have the ability to merge these two tables with a specific column. So I'm going to click on my sales table, and I'm going to click combine, and I'm going to merge these two queries. So at this point, what it's providing me is the ability to merge these two tables based on a column. So I'm going to choose product SKU here from the sales table, and from the product cost table, that's again related to the SKU table. So by just selecting these two tables, I'm creating a match. It's a left outer join which I created. Obviously, I have the ability to create other types of joins as well, very similar to how you create a join in a relational database table. I created the join, and basically I just selected it, and it merged these two queries. And one of the interesting thing you would notice on the right side is all those steps which I did is it's basically provides those steps one by one, so you can in fact remove a step or add a step as and when you like. So when I created that new relationship, it basically added a new column. And in this case, what it's saying is, hey, I have the ability to choose the product cost, which is actually in the Excel table. Because of the fact of that the relationship existed, I can add that product cost to my sales data right here. So in fact, it created the relationship, and it basically showing the product cost in my sales table. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to create a calculated column. Pretty much I want to create the cost, and the cost, the way I'm going to calculate the cost is quantity multiplied by product cost. And it's pretty simple to do. All I need to do is I need to go pick up the quantity, and then I press my control key, pick up the product cost, and then from I choose my add column, and pretty much I choose from the standard operations I have, I can pretty much choose multiply, and it basically creates a multiplication where it's basically multiplying uh, the the cost, the product cost, and the quantity. And I'm going to rename this as my cost. And I'm just going to save it right now. I'm just going to apply. it's going to apply some change. And now I want to, in fact, bring more data from my SQL Server database. In fact, what I'm going to pull is my region data. So I'm going to go to my SQL Server data again from my recent connections, because I already defined the recent connections earlier. And I just choose a region right here because I want to expand and show a region data as well in my visualization. And I say, OK. So it pulled the region data right here. Now, one of the easy thing I can do here is, because of the fact that I only want the region name in this particular column, I can right click on region and say remove all other columns. So basically it just trimmed it to just the region name. Now, I'm not going to stop here. I want to, in fact, I have some more data, which is actually in a CSV file. Now I pull data from Excel, from SQL. I can also pull data from a comma separated values. So in this case, all the manager data is actually in a comma separated CSV file. And I can quickly pull that, and it basically connects and brings the data. And it automatically choose comma as a delimiter and showed and it's showing me all the manager by region. And when I choose that, it's basically bringing that data right here. And what's interesting is the first column in that CSV file should be really the header. So the region name and the manager name should be header. So I can actually click one button right here and say use first row as headers, and it quickly picks region name and manager name as header, and it and puts that as the header for this particular table. Now, the next thing I really want to do is I want to create a date table. So typically, you if you think about a data warehouse, if you think about a star schema or something like that, you typically create these dimensions, and a date dimension is a pretty common dimension you create. So in this case, you can actually create a dimension for your date by simply, in effect, go to my new data source, and I can actually create a query right here. And in this case, I'm going to choose and I'm going to change the name of the query as date. And I've already defined my query here. In a sense, I got a script right here, and what that script does is it defines a function that accepts a start date and an end date and an optional culture, and when invoked, this function will produce a query result defining the date date data. So I'm going to click on the advanced editor, and I'm going to paste this particular query right here. So you can actually create this Power Query script and insert it, which is basically creating a script with a bunch of data. So when I click done, as you can see, it gave me a start date and end date. And I really want to generate dates between 01/01/2013 to 12/31/2015, and I'm going to have a culture which is English, and I'm going to put en, and I'm just click invoke, and it created that dates which I'm looking for. And I'm going to just give it a name called dates or something like that, and I have it right there. So now that I have all the data which I created, I got the sales, product cost, region, manager, and dates, and I'm ready to create my data visualization. So I'm going to close this particular query editor, and I'm going to say close and apply. So it goes ahead and applies and creates that the data. Now I'm ready to take a look at my relationships and see how my relationships look at, and it's pretty interesting. It actually picked up all the relationships which I want. I got my sales data, I got my product cost, and I got my dates. But actually, I'm interested in creating an extra relationship between the order date and the date table, so that I can actually get that extended date dimension. So I can actually simply click on order date and then drag and drop to the date table, and it creates that relationship. Pretty much what it did here is it automatically detected all those relationships between sales, region, and manager tables, and it also define a many-to-many relationship. It also shows me whether the relationship is many-to-many or one-to-many or whatnot right here because there's a star and a one right here. And I can also click here to see manage relationships. Uh, uh, and then I can select the relationship between the manager and the region table right here, and I can click edit, for instance, and I can see how that particular relationships are defined. So I can click OK right here. So I just verified that I got the relationship between manager to the region table, sales to dates table, and as such. So I'm ready to close this diagram. The next thing I want to do is, I know there's a bunch of values, especially actually in the dates table, which is not appropriate to use or show in reports. For instance, things like quarter key or date key are things which I don't want to show. So I can actually click on the date key, for instance, quarter key, and then year key. I can actually right click and say hide in report view. I can do the same thing for each one of them right here pretty easily. You can also adjust your sorting. For instance, let's say for instance I have this month, and while I have this month right here, I want to sort it by a different column. So I click modeling right here, and then I can sort it and say I want to sort the month by month key. And the same thing with day. While I have day right here, I want to sort that with the date key. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to change some of the column categorization. So I'm going to click on sales, and I'm going to choose my quantity right here. And then I want to make sure that sum is it's basically quantity is a sum. But when I look at the unit price, for instance, which is somewhere the unit price right here actually, and that should be an average. So it automatically applies the average right here by click of a button. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to apply categorization to the state name, and the state name should actually be state or province. And what that does is when I choose that, it's basically adorned with a spatial icon, and what that means is it will be enabled for spatial reporting when we use within a map type of visualization. So the next thing I want to do is I want to create some calculated columns. So I can actually create a new column right here. So obviously, created a new column, and I can, start typing what we call as a DAX query right here. So any DAX query, which if you guys are familiar with DAX, you can actually type that in right here. So over here, I wanted to say gross revenue is quantity multiplied by unit price. So I'm just going to say quantity multiplied by unit price. And the format is going to be a whole number right here. So I can actually change the data type right there. I want to create one more new column. In this case, it's going to be net revenue. Net revenue, and that's going to be a gross revenue minus discount amount. And the next thing I want to do is I want to create new measures to report on profitability. So I can click on measure, and in this case, the measure which I want to create is actually gross profit. So gross profit is going to be, so I'm going to say gross profit is, and the what I'm going to say is it's going to be sum of gross revenue minus sum of cost. So it's basically the total sum of revenue and the cost, and I subtract the gross revenue by cost, and I get the gross profit. And I'm going to create one more measure. In this case, I'm going to call it profitability. Profitability. And profitability, it's going to be a little complex, not too complex actually. I'm going to divide the sales, in fact, net profit, right, actually sales gross profit, and I'm going to divide that uh, with the sum of sales in a net revenue. And just finish my, so that's it. Well, there was, just found out that there was a comma missing. Yep, I fixed that, and there you go. So I got all those measures created as well. So as you can see, I got the gross revenue, net revenue, gross profit, and profitability. These are all, calculated columns as well as measures, which measures which I created. Now at this point, I'm ready to, create the Power BI dashboard. So I click on Report, and I can actually, start. I start with a blank canvas, and I can create whatever I want to. So in this case, I'm going to quickly put an image because I just want to make sure this is this report is for Tailspin Toys. So I want to add that report right there, and I want to the first thing I want to do is create a slicer for the year. So in this case, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my dates table, and I'm going to choose my year, and I'm going to simply drag and drop that year right here. So I got all the year data right here, which it's basically showing. And in fact, what I want to do is I want that to be a choice which I can make. So in this case, I got a choice like right here. So over here, I can actually choose whatever year I want to because it's a slicer sort of visualization. Now, the next thing I want to do is I'm going to create a combo chart to display the monthly revenue, cost, and profitability. So again, from the fields table, right here, I'm going to, right from my sales table, I'm going to drag my net revenue, and I'm just going to put that in a blank canvas. So as you can see, it basically showed the net revenue. In fact, I'm going to adjust that a little bit so it looks good. I would rather have this right on the top and this on the bottom. And I have, in fact, maybe somewhere like this. It looks better. And then, so I have the net revenue right here. And I also want to add a few more columns. In fact, I want to get the cost by right from here. So I got the net revenue and cost. So I'm able to compare the total of the net revenue by cost. And then I also want to add the month. So I'm just going to go to the month right here. And then basically I'm going to add that month also right here. So I got a visualization which actually shows me the net revenue, the cost, and the month. So I really want to, sort this by month. So I can actually come here and say sort it by month. So it basically shows by month. And that's kind of how I want it to, like, I don't want to go by the date. So you can actually change the sorting to whatever you like it to be. Now I want to change this to a different type of visualization called line and clustered column chart. Therefore, because I can actually show a line on top of it to compare other values. And the line which I want to have right here is going to be profitability. So I'm going to, what I really want to have is the net revenue by cost by month, and I want to see how the profitability varies across it. So I'm going to drag my profitability to the line value. So as you can see, it basically shows me a line and shows me how the profitability varies through different months, and I can actually compare that with my net revenue as well. And if I'm not, really happy with some of the colors, I can actually choose the legends right here. And in fact, I can choose, maybe a different color for my profitability if I want to, or maybe, a different color for my background, my title, or, x-axis, or whatever I want it to be. Now, what would be interesting is to see this data by manager, right? So I want to know, based on the managers, typically a manager might be managing a particular region, and I want to see how the profitability is doing for that particular manager. So what I can do is basically I can actually choose in fact, I'm just going to choose the region name first, and I'm going to choose the unit price for that region name. So I got the unit price right here, and I can actually drag it right here. So I got the region by unit price, and I'm going to also, like I said before, I also want to see the manager name in a separate table, and I want to see the manager, and I would like to see the net revenue for the manager. So I can actually drag that right here. So I got the region name, and then I also have the manager as well right next to it. And now, since I'm looking at sales data, what would be nice is if I could actually see the sales data by region in a visual format by showing a map. So if I show drag and drop the state name right here, because of the fact that it's a geocoded geospatial data, it basically shows the state name in a map. But I'm actually really interested in the profitability. So I'm going to drag and drop the profitability right here. And the other thing is, this is nice, but instead of those circles, I would like to have a better visualization of the map. So I can actually choose a filled map. So basically, it shows a filled map. But again, one of the issue here is that it's even though it's filled, it actually shows too much data. I am not really interested much in the Alaska and the other regions. So what I can actually do here is I can choose the state name, and pretty much I can select everything, and I'm not interested in Alaska here, and I'm also not interested in Hawaii. So that it basically filters only the things which I want to see, so from a view perspective, it's much more better. So that's pretty much it. And then I got a fully functional interactive dashboard right here with the data. So as you can see, I can interact with it. Let's say, for instance, I choose just 2014 data and 2015. I can see how the data is changing, and then I can also filter it by if I click on any data element. For instance, if I want to see it only for Texas, or if I only want to see it from Montana, I can see how this data kind of changes, and then I can actually go ahead and then change the filters as I want to and interact with this particular report. Now, one of the other things I can do is I can actually have multiple pages within this report. So for instance, I can actually rename this first page to, let's say, summary. And then I want to rename the second page to, let's say I want to see the regional product item sales. And I can have a different visualization right here. What I really want to do is I want to copy the slicer, the ear slicer. I'm going to copy that, and I just put Control C and Control V, and I was able to easily copy that right here. Now, what I really want to have is a visualization here, which is not available in the Power BI desktop. But what I can actually do is I can go and download a bunch of visualization. In fact, we have a site called powerbi.com/visuals, and I can actually browse a gallery of a bunch of different visuals which are available. So the visual which I'm interested in is called chord. So if I choose that chord visualization, I have that right here. Now I can click on this and I can download this visual, and I just say agree, and it basically I have the ability to download that visual, and I'm just going to put that in my desktop right here. Okay, so now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to import that visualization. So I can click on visualization, I can click on this button here, and it basically choose that particular visualization. In this case, the chord visualization, and I can open it, and it basically imports that particular visualization, and I have that visualization right here. So now that I have this particular visualization, I can actually drag and drop, choose that visualization right here, and I want to make that a little bit bigger right here, and I want to choose a bunch of fields. So in this case, I'm going to choose the product category, and I want to choose the region name, and these are the from values. I mean, the real value I want to show is the profitability. I'm sorry, the net revenue. So I'm going to choose the net revenue here, and I'm going to choose that and the value. And as you can see, it basically created this, really nice visualization, which I can save. And now I can interact with this particular report. Like as you can see, if I change the date, I'm able to interact with that particular visualization. So it's showing you all my different product categories by region, and basically I'm able to interact with it using a different type of visualization. Now, as you can see, and I can easily, add filters, change fields or whatnot, and interact with this report live. But typically, as a Power user, you would just create this particular, data visualization, and the next thing you might want to do is simply publish that into a Power BI service. So you can actually, quickly sign in to your Power BI service, and you can, upload that visualization to your Power BI service. Thank you so much.